a Monday, and you know what that means, don't you? It's time for another exciting episode of TAXITV Live. Yeah, baby. Woohoo! The big show is on the air, and I'd like to welcome my special guest star today, Mr. Chuck Schlacter. So I have known Chuck for, I don't know, probably 15 years or more, something like that, maybe even 20. He was part of the original crew of people that would come to the Taxi Road Rally back in the day when that original little group of people decided that it would be really cool to pay it forward to people that were new to the rally and new to taxi. So hats off to you, Chuck, for being part of that crew, because that has lived on now through 29 years of the road rally. And so Chuck and I were hanging out at the road rally for a minute in the lobby, I don't know, Saturday night, I believe. And Chuck said, you know, there's all this stuff that I study, Disney, Imagineering is big on it. Couple other organizations. He said, I would love to share this stuff with taxi members. And as he explained it to me, I said, we really need to put it in the context of musicians, composers, people pitching for film and TV. So he put a whole thing together, which means I don't have to do anything today except sit here and get educated along with the rest of you guys. I'm going to let Chuck freestyle, and I'm just going to kick it and see what I can learn as well. Chuck, I will only interrupt you if something needs clarification or, you know, we had a little Wi-Fi mishap, which has been known to happen, stuff like that. I'll let you know. Should we take notes? Yes, Marianne Laird, you should take notes. Or you could go back and rewatch the episode, or you could look at the AI-generated notes that will appear somewhere. I don't know. But yes, so Chuck, give us a little setup and tell us what it is that we're going to learn today, and then have at it.
Well, we're going to touch on a bunch of things.
Oh, you're a little lower than we were before, volume-wise. Sorry. Yeah, can you check your input on your thing and see if you're like just tipping into the red?
I'm too hot or not?
No, you're too low.
Okay, let me see if I can do that.
And I've got you boosted on my end. It's funny, a minute ago when we were chit-chatting, you were louder.
Yeah.
Are you on a Mac or a PC?
I'm on an iPad.
Ah, okay. Well, yeah, go to your settings and look for input and bring it up to about 3/4.
Okay.
Settings, input, or sound, and then input. Whoa, I lost you.
Yeah, I'll be right back.
Okay. Last thing I said to Chuck before I rolled the music was, I hope the tech gods are with us today. Oh, man. Oh, and there's an echo, too. Okay, I'm going to use my earbuds so we can avoid that. It's always something. But you know what? It's Thanksgiving week here in America, so everybody's in a good mood no matter how the tech gods are treating us.
Any better, Michael?
Not
better?
much. Hang on. Talk to me now.
Yeah. Hang on.
Whoa, that was loud. Well, hello, chat room. How are you guys? Did you find the settings thing?
I did.
Okay.
How about
Well, I can't tell.
better?
No, you sound farther away and lower.
Well, how about now?
Keep talking. It's hard to tell with how about now.
Is that any better? About the same?
Yeah, people are saying still quiet but cleaner sounding.
Okay. How about now, as I get closer to the microphone?
Yeah, it's a little better, yeah. Where is your sound setting at on input?
Well, I've got to disappear here again. that's under sounds?
Yeah, go to settings and then go to sound.
Mm-hmm.
And then there should be input or output. You want input. And the
I
little...
don't see the microphone I'm using is in the iPad.
Right. This will adjust that microphone.
I do not see that setting, Michael.
Okay, I'm on a Mac laptop. Do you have a thing that says sound under notifications or somewhere? I don't know what your screen looks like on
Yes,
an
it is.
iPad.
Yes, I am in sounds. So
Okay.
I found
And you don't have a thing that says output and input?
Nope.
Really?
Sorry about this, everybody. As Michael said, this was working fine when we were.
All right, well, just get it closer, I guess.
Yeah.
I didn't know you were on an iPad. I would have told you to use a computer instead. Just iPads don't
Okay.
work well for this. Yeah, and it looks like your Wi-Fi is about to go out too. You're getting really pixelated and jerky.
I'm on a good network. I'm on a robust network, so. This is weird because we were fine. Just
I know, but
when we started.
this happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can see how
Yeah.
many bars you've got on my end, and it's going from red to green, red to green. Anyway, let's just try it. I'm going to bring you up. I've got you as loud as I can get you, and I'm going to bring myself down so comparatively we're closer. Keep talking, though.
I'm looking to see if there's any other change in this.
Now I've got nothing. I've got no sound on you whatsoever. Isn't live TV fun, Chuck? I've got no audio on you whatsoever. Oh, your microphone's turned off. I can see.
How about now?
Now it's fine. Works better when you hit the on button.
Yeah, always. Okay, sorry everybody. This is the two people.
All right,
that
so
work
yeah,
with technology. It's embarrassing.
Just speak up and okay, let's do this one more time. Go for it. Tell everybody,
Okay.
give us the encapsulated version and then lean
Yeah,
into
sorry
it.
for wasting- As most people know that I've met at the taxi rally, I had a long career as a financial advisor. And one of the things I didn't expect as I embarked on that career, that along the way, I was going to basically get a PhD in human behavior. Even though we help people make smart choices with their money, I was really in the behavioral management business. If somebody wanted to send their kids to Harvard, that would probably have to change the behavior of their saving and spending patterns. And another important function of a financial advisor is they keep people from doing the wrong thing at the wrong time. In the investment world, people buy high and they sell low, and they sabotage themselves. So I literally had thousands and thousands and thousands of conversations over a long, long career. And I became an observer of human nature and what worked and what didn't work, and how we self-sabotaged ourselves along the way. And that informed not only my personal and professional life, but also has informed how I first embarked on a composer, and I joined Taxi in 2006, and now by extension as a library owner, in terms of how to conduct meetings, importantly, how to build trust relationships. There's speed and trust. I knew how to put together presentations. I learned how to take complex financial ideas and turn them into words that people could actually understand using metaphors and analogies. And I learned how important words are. I love the phrase semantically weighed. And that basically means you're choosing words.
Say it again, thematically?
Semantically weighed.
What's
Semantics.
the second word? Weighed.
Words that have weight.
Gotcha. Okay, semantically weighed. Got it.
Yeah, that's one of those light words that are, even with diction, it's hard to come through. It's how you choose words and you put them together that they have impact. And in discussions I had with our clients, I had to develop ways to say things that appeal both to the rational mind and their emotional mind. Because people first analyze a decision rationally, but it's the emotions that pull the trigger. And that's true for every one of us. So a great example is this phrase. We were in New York 3.5 years ago, and there was an exhibition of Edward Hopper's paintings at the Whitney Museum. His most famous painting is called Nighthawk. It's a diner in New York at night with several people. And a lot of his paintings, because he kind of came out of the Depression, a lot of his paintings were about loneliness and despair. Lived in New York and around NYU, and would paint people in the apartment across the street. And I don't know how I even saw this, but there was a little letter in an envelope, in a frame off to the side. At one point, museums were starting to show more non-representational art. He wrote a letter to a short-lived magazine called Punch Magazine. And this phrase jumped out at me. And it's going to make sense in a second, because there was something else going on 3.5 years ago that we were concerned about. But here was the phrase: no amount of skillful invention can replace the essential element of imagination. The two semantically weighed parts of that are skillful invention and the essential element of imagination. Now, this is about the time we were all freaking out about AI, and that jumped off the page. He wrote that over 70 years ago. So that's an example of something being semantically weighed. And because skillful invention seems like it's just a flash in the pan, just kind of passing through. Essential element means like water, air, and the stuff to breathe and drink. So I've shared that with a lot of people about AI. Now, nobody knows where that's going. I don't need to get off on that. But I started noticing as we started working with more and more successful people along the way, and the majority of our clients were CPAs and accountants. I started noticing some of the traits of some of these people and why they were so successful. One trait is they were open to learning, and they were open to taking suggestions and listening to ideas that we presented, and hopefully taking action on those ideas. I learned how to build trust relationships. And I think the easiest definition of how to build trust is you do what you say you're going to do. And I learned when I didn't know the answer to something, I said that I don't know the answer to that, but I'll get you the answer tomorrow. Which is another part of building trust relationships. But they also seem to have an abundance mindset. They're actively participating in charitable giving along the way. But the other thing I noticed is they had the ability of seeing the big picture and all the moving pieces at the same time. And I started trying to analyze that a little bit, and then I had the aha one day. We learned that in music. You're playing the whole piece, and then you've got this measure and the notes on this beat. So we've got the big picture and all the moving pieces. And also, if you're in an ensemble, if you're the bass player in a band, you've got all the rest of the band you're interacting with. So again, I learned a lot about human nature. And now how that ties over into all the musicians and composers and singers, songwriters, and top-liners I've met over the last 17 or 18 years. The couple traits, and I've got notes, so I'm going to refer to my notes here, so bear with me a minute. The thing I've noticed about some of the most successful taxi members is they seem to share a natural curiosity. how does this thing work as they're trying to explore new genres or learn a new musical instrument or a piece of software. I want to figure out how this works. They've learned how to absorb rejection, because obviously there's a lot of rejection as you're getting started. Everybody gets more returns than forwards, forever, for that matter. Our mutual good friend Matt Hurt, when he was, I don't know if he's still a Taxi member, but he got returns as much as anybody else along the way. They all seem to have a strong work ethic. And by the way, I'm picturing many of the people that were on the stage in the panels at the Taxi rally. Most of them are friends. They all have a strong work ethic. But they also know that you can work hard, but you have to take time off and play hard as well. Having that work-life balance. I know people that burn themselves out doing this, and that's not healthy. So, but they seem to be very goal-oriented, and they're fun to be around. They're fun to be around. They're fun to have as friends. So I'll pause and see if you want to comment, or if there are any comments coming in, Michael.
No, people all saying hello to each other so far. That's about it.
Okay, good. Hello. But in terms of getting more specific about the relationships that we have amongst one another and with our business partners, and I said this I did the one-on-one lunch, meet and greet lunch on Saturday. I suggested that people keep showing up. There's a lot to be said just for showing up. And I haven't missed a taxi rally since I joined. My first taxi rally was 2007, and I haven't missed one.
Me either. I've been to every damn one of them.
That's right. And many before I started showing up. And that ties into something that I also learned in my practice. You never know when you're going to meet somebody that has a huge impact on your life. And the other part of it is you never know when you're going to meet somebody and you have a huge impact on their life. And so I'm constantly meeting people. Fortunately, I've always enjoyed meeting people. I haven't had to work on that. It's just something that came naturally to me. And this, I don't know, Michael, if I ever shared this with you. My first rally in 2007, I walked into the lobby of the hotel, and Dave Walton was standing smack in the middle of the lounge by himself, nobody else. And he had his picture on the taxi forum, so I recognized him, and I went over and introduced myself to him, and we chatted for a little bit. And then he said, "Let's go over to the line. Matt and Maz are waiting in line." The first three people I met were Matt Hurt, John Mazzei, and Dave Walton. Now, Michael knows these people. At the time, they were all writing for Oprah Winfrey. So they were taxi all-stars back then.
Yep.
And those were the first three people that I met. They've all been to my house. I've been to Matt's house. I've been to Maz's house. No telling how much red wine Matt Hurt and I have consumed at the Taxi Rally and the Production Music Conference. And I miss Matt. He, as you know, left to go back to Switzerland. It's like 6 years ago now, which is hard to believe it's been that long ago. But they're lifelong friends, and I did talk about that at the one-on-one lunches. I'm getting that mixed up with the one-on-one mentor thing, meet and greet. My opening comments are basically saying meet as many people as you can this weekend, because in this hotel is someone that you'll collaborate with. In this hotel, there's somebody that will, after you build a trust relationship, will introduce you to their best business partners. In this hotel this weekend, there are lifelong friends. You just don't know who they are. And I said that's not just an observation, that's my testimony to you. I've lived that over the last 18 years. So you keep showing up, that's what happens. That's what happens. Relationships get deeper and broader, and you develop lifelong friends. And they're good people. They're good people. But I think it is also really important to be proactive. That falls in the category of just showing up. Read the listings and write for the listings and submit. I'm also an advocate, and I used this phrase for the first time in my class this year. Building a catalog is a marathon, not a sprint. And I wasn't paying attention to the reaction, but I basically said this: find joy in your returns. I said, this might be a stretch for you, but find joy in your returns. And I went on to say, a turning point for me in my taxi career relationship was about 3 years in, where I had 2 or 3 libraries I was working with, and they started signing my taxi returns. And I just took a minute of reflection and said to myself, would this piece of music and this body of work even existed without the benefit of a taxi deadline? And the answer was no.
I'd also like to clarify one thing from something we've learned many times over the years is a return doesn't mean it's not good. A return 80% of the time statistically under this roof means that they pitched it at something and it's not a very close match to what was asked for. So it gets returned because it wasn't right for that brief, but then it can get signed by another library who might be looking for something that's 20 degrees left of center from what that brief was. So that's how that happens more often than not.
And I, based on what I said earlier, metaphors and analogies, here's the analogy I've come up with, Michael, for that. To me, a taxi listing is like a keyhole. I got to get my hand in the frame here. I don't know where, backwards here. It's a keyhole. Can you hold up your hands like a keyhole? And your track has to fit the keyhole exactly to turn the tumblers to open the door to a forward. That's my description of a taxi submission.
Well, it's the entire industry runs on that. It's not just endemic to taxi. It's literally the music supervisors and therefore the music libraries and therefore taxi, because people might wonder who are new to this field, well, why does it have to be so close? Because they've determined this certain type of music for this certain moment or scene or beat within a show or a movie needs this kind of thing.
Got to turn the tumblers.
Yep.
Got to turn the tumblers. Now, on the other hand, once you have a relationship with libraries, it's similar to taking the same key and throwing it into the opening of a hangar for a 747. It's going to land because libraries are always looking for music. So find joy in your return because you're going to have an opportunity to find them place them somewhere else. Now, with this caveat, listen to the critique and follow through on that and incrementally make your music better so you're better positioned when future opportunities come about. I also think it's really critical to continue sharpening your saw. Michael, one of the things we chatted about is Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That's the last of the 7 habits, sharpening your saw. And we had a little discussion in my class this year. What could you do to sharpen your saw? And people said, learn how to use my DAW better, get better at building relationships. I mean, we could go on for the next 20 minutes of ways to sharpen your saw.
Well, go on for a minute or two and mention some others, because I think it's important that people know this stuff. They might not think about it.
Well, no, that's a good point. Good point. I've been surprised when I asked fellow composers, do you practice? How few people say yes. And I usually say this, if you think about it, if you're keyboard oriented, if you spent 20 minutes in the morning doing Hanon exercises, would you be better and more effective when you sit down in front of your DAW inputting data? Of course you would. Of course you would. A couple things hit my radar screen about practice. One is from Philip Glass. It's a pretty short quote. He's regarded as one of the pioneers of minimalistic music, modern minimalistic music. He says this: if you practice, you get better. It's that simple. It's that simple. But my favorite anecdote, the world famous cellist Pablo Casals was living in San Juan, Puerto Rico, because he was from Puerto Rico at the end of his life. And a reporter flew down to interview him. He was in his 90s. He was like 92 or 93. And in the course of the interview, she asked this question, Mr. Cassells, why do you still practice? Pretty good question. And his answer was, I feel like I'm beginning to make some progress. I love that quote. That's somebody that has an abundance mindset and a growth mindset, who continue to learn and continue to get better, even at 93. And it might be the reason why he lived to be in his 90s. He had a reason to get up in the morning and play the cello. And I remember part of this, and she met him for breakfast, and she was in the home. He came from his room. He was all bent over, and just really stiff and bent over. They had breakfast, and then he went to the cello, and his whole body opened up with this great flow. So there is a medicinal part of playing a musical instrument. But other ways to sharpen your saw, and Michael, you and I share this one, is reading.
Yep.
I think it's a critical way to not only enlarge your curiosity about the world, because one thing leads to another. You read this book, and then you hear that person knew that person, and you get on a journey of feeding your mind with positive information. And much like you never know when you're going to meet someone that has an impact on your life, you never know when you're going to read something that'll have a huge impact on your life.
And if I may interrupt again, please. It's so easy with social media. I find I spend more time on social media now than I did a few years ago, because we're doing a lot of it for Taxi. So I go on every day, every morning, and check and see how our accounts are doing. But it's so easy to get sucked into it. And that was my reading time. I literally, for the first 30 years of Taxi, I read an hour every morning, unless I was like deathly ill or on a plane or something. And it's amazing how much stuff you learn and how much it opens your mind to things that you never thought about. Of course, I always read marketing and business management books and some music related books, but I wish that there was a way to entice children, grade school kids, to really get into reading more, because you're absolutely right. I could not agree with you more, Chuck.
Yeah. And one of the things that's been surprising to me over the years is we talk about books when I do my class. And I had one person one year tell me the following year, I bought my husband every one of the books that you recommended for Christmas. So I was helping people buy Christmas gifts as I was talking about books. But other ways to sharpen your saw is learn another instrument. One of the things that is perplexing to me about music education, they never talk about when you're learning your first instrument, you're learning how to mechanically maneuver the instrument, and you're also learning the language of music. And once you learn the language of music, picking on a second instrument, now you just have to learn how to manipulate the instrument to make music. So it's easy to add instruments along the way. And that to me is a fun part of this journey. And I've conceptualized what we do as a journey from the very beginning. I love exploring different genres and learning how they work. And just some of the offbeat instruments I've accumulated. I've got a tenor guitar, a baritone guitar. I've got a Trace Cubano, which is 3 courses of 2 strings. I have a Puerto Rican cuatro, obviously the ukulele and banjo, and mandolin and mandola. And I don't use them all the time, but I've got all these wonderful voices. And the trick I've learned with these is when I'm using them on a track, I put a tuner on the headstock and I leave it on, because I don't know what notes I'm playing necessarily. The tuner will tell me what notes I'm playing. But I did a project a number of years ago with all acoustic instruments, and I'd go from mandolin to mandola, and I would feel my brain kind of sizzling, because it was just this input. It was a really strange physical reaction to all of that. But sharpening your saw should be fun, because you're getting better at what you do. It should be a lot of fun.
I like the fact that you mentioned other genres too. I had Matt Hurt on a panel at the Road Rally this year. I brought him in via Zoom for the panel. But Matt was the first person who really opened my eyes to wow, you can build a substantial catalog and create a good portion of your income from sync by zigging when everybody else zags. I was at Matt's house doing a TAXITV with him, and he started telling me, he said, yeah, very few other people will do Chinese music. I'm pulling these out of the air right now, but, Hungarian music, Romani or Romani music. It's like, wow, hadn't even heard of that one. But that's the point, is if you are one of 137 dramedy cues in a typical music library catalog, you've got a 1 in 137 chance, if the music supervisor or editor looking at that catalog even chooses from that catalog, your odds are 1 in 137. If they're looking for Romani, I can never get it right. Anyway, it's basically
gypsy.
Yeah, it's gypsy music. I don't think we're allowed to say gypsy anymore. I think that's on the list of forbidden words, so forgive us. Anyway, it's something most people won't even bother to look up. They won't figure out how to make it. They won't look at the instrumentation, and they'll just pass on it. And meanwhile, the one person who does it is the one the library is going to get through Taxi. They're going to call up and say, can you make 10 or 11 more of those? Why, yes, I can. Great. Now you've got 11 or 12 tracks in that catalog, and your 12 tracks are 12 out of 16 under that genre. So when a music editor or when a video editor is working on a travel show for the Travel Channel and they need Romani music, they go to that genre within the catalog. You stand a really good chance of getting licensed because you chose to do something different. So I love the fact that you brought up learning other genres to sharpen your saw. And you brought up another thing with your range of instruments, which is people go, well, I don't have any of those instruments. Well, there are sample libraries for all those instruments. Most of them are really good these days. It would be preferable if you had the actual stringed instrument and could play it. But even if it's a sample library, just play it by hand. Don't do it by MIDI. Maybe even play it by hand and run it through a little speaker and mic the speaker, give it some room and some air. But you can do all these things to make those unusual instruments, if you're using samples to create those tracks, just know that playing it by hand versus doing it by MIDI is going to make it sound remarkably more realistic. And then just find one instrument, even if you take a guitar and tune it up really high or capo it up really high and treat it like a mandolin or something. You can do all those things.
Shaker.
Yeah, right.
It could be an shaker.
Yep.
Well, that is a piece of advice Matt gave me 18 years ago.
Yeah.
And I've had success with Asian music all over Asia. When I first started showing up on my BMI statement, I'd be in my studio, you had to scratch my head and shaking my head saying, surely there's somebody in Asia that can write better Asian music than some guy in a valley in Tennessee. And I couldn't reconcile it for a long time. And I finally did one day. You've probably been to a P.F. Chang's a time or two. They're a ubiquitous chain. To me, they're not really an Asian restaurant. They're Asian-ish. So I'm the P.F. Chang's of Asian music.
Right, because nobody is judging it on its authenticity. You're not having somebody who's head of the classical Asian music department at whatever university listening to it go, well, that doesn't sound authentic enough. No, it's Samantha Brown or somebody on the Travel Channel that needs 12 seconds of music when she walks into a cute little alleyway with little lamps and stuff all over and needs authentic music to help set the place that she's in, the country that she's in, or the market she's in, or the restaurant she's in. So yeah, it doesn't have to be incredibly good. It just has to be good enough.
Yes. Now, and a bigger picture on this subject, Michael, is major motion pictures. When I explain how a production music library works, I always explain in a major motion picture, it could be Hans Zimmer as the composer. But if there's a scene in an Indian restaurant, he's not going to take time to call Indian musicians and have a 4-hour session. They go to a production music library.
Yeah.
So when they open the door of the restaurant, you hear a sitar drone start. It's 100%. When there's a jazz trio or a quartet, a cocktail party, that's a library track. when there's a scene in a diner and they want something that sounds like ZZ Top, they can license ZZ Top for 150 grand, or they can get something that has that vibe from a library.
Yeah,
So
they
the
just
source
call Keith
music,
LeBrant.
there you go. So source music, and it's been surprising when I bring up that subject. We stay in the theater till the last credit is done, and sometimes it's the music. But you see all the libraries, and many of them are taxi-friendly libraries, in the credits.
Yeah,
It's this little thing. It's this little thing. It's all that source music, and it's 100% of the time in television and film that the ethnicity of the music is played with that in that ethnic restaurant. 100% of the time. Do you remember? This is 8 to 10 years ago, and you were running the listings. It seemed like there were 8 to 10 listings a day for dubstep. You remember that heyday?
I literally just thought of this last night. I was watching something and there was dubstep music in it, and I thought, boy, I'm glad that kind of came and went in a hurry. It lasted for a couple of years, but thank God it didn't stick around as happy, clappy ukulele tracks have.
Well, I decided to try my hand at that because there was so many opportunities for dubstep, and little did I know, in the process of that, I created a whole new genre that I call dumb step. It sounded so stupid. But I tried. It could have been something I did naturally, but I got that out of my system. You will probably start running dubstep listings in the next 5 to 10 years because of the cyclical nature of styles.
I sure hope not. But I never liked that there were only like 2 dubstep artists that I had any respect for, just because their stuff was interesting. But it just didn't, I don't know, it didn't make you feel good. Maybe I'm holding music, the bar for what music is supposed to do for humans, too high by hoping that we listen to it and it somehow makes us feel better, enriches us. I guess, you could say death metal and dubstep might have the opposite effect of that.
Going back to Matt for a second, and this falls into playing the long game, I think, which is a critical part of a growth mindset. Matt had a tie track in the last Spider-Man movie. That was with a very taxi-friendly, non-exclusive library, and in their library for 10 years. And the first time it was used was in the Spider-Man movie.
Yep.
It is a long game.
Yeah, absolutely. I know he's got one track that he said is his biggest earning track, and it's like the simplest, dumbest little thing. Nobody's going to win any awards for composing that piece of music, he says, but it's earned him more money than any other track that he's ever made. So you just never know.
Yeah. Well, he's playing the long game, you were talking about back in the days when it was the core group of people. There was Keith and Ethan Okamura and Paul Otten and on and on. I call them the old guard now. One of the things that Matt and Maz and I did, like every year, and sometimes a couple times, we would gather up 20 people in the lounge area and say, "Come on in, let's have dinner." We get a big table in the Daily Grill. And at the end of the night, it was usually me, I would tap on my glass and I would say, "If it's okay with you, Matt, Maz, and I would like to pick up the tab tonight." And I sat down. Nothing else. We picked up the tab. And we agreed that this was important to do to illustrate an abundance mindset. We could pick up dinner and still be able to go to breakfast tomorrow. And we did that year after year. And I think that started developing this abundance mindset of, and also lifting one another up too. That's an incredible part of the taxi rally. People are lifting one another up. It's a great thing. You have a lot to be proud of, Michael.
Thank you. I just poured the foundation, built the barn, opened the doors. It's the people who walk through the doors that really did that. But I've got to say, there used to be another, I'll call large-scale convention that was started by a large organization, and they pretty much copied the Road Rally panel for panel, the same location that we were doing it at the time, Hollywood and Highland at the Lowe's. And I for a couple of years, I sponsored that just because I wanted to be there and see what they were doing, probably industrial spying to some extent. And I got to say, the vibe of that one was completely different. That one was guys with leather pants with a codpiece and a cool hat and lots of tattoos, hanging out in corners trying to look like I'm a rock star. You should just walk by me and feel what a rock star I am. It's a whole different vibe. The Road Rally has always been, and it probably goes back to you guys, that core group of people that just decided we're going to be helpful. We're going to take those newbies that look like they're scared to death that they walked into this convention. They don't know anybody. They're 1,000 miles away from home. Is this going to be a bummer? Am I going to feel like I spent $1,000 on airfare and hotel and it's just a big waste of time? I've only had that said to me once in 29 years. Somebody said to me this was a giant waste of my time. But I have a feeling that person would have had open heart surgery by Michael DeBakey and told him it was a giant waste of his time as well. Just kind of a negative person. But it's for some reason the Road Rally really has always maintained, even though some of those old guard guys don't come back all that often because, like Matt Casey moved to Switzerland, the vibe that they created stays, and I've always appreciated that and marveled at it, really.
Yeah, it's really special. This year attendance was off because of people canceling rooms at kind of at the last minute, as you know. But the thing I observed, there was still a lot of engagement, and a lot of engagement with the people that have had a lot of experience with the newbies. And there was an energy, in spite of the numbers being down. There was an energy in the lounge.
Yeah, I think the energy was there because everybody was happy their flight didn't get affected by the government shutdown. No, it was. And I started doing something I've never done in the past, only last year and the year before maybe, which is asking everybody who, if you're a first-year member, raise your hand. In 40 or 50% of the ballroom, those hands went up that were new people or first-year members. And how many of you, this is your first rally? And a huge number of hands. My favorite part, of course, is when I ask how many of you have ever signed a deal or had a placement or both because of your involvement in Taxi, and somewhere around 60% of the people in the ballroom stood up, and we got that on in a photo and on video. And I think about it because people always say, gosh, does anybody, you see these people posting online, does anybody ever have any success with Taxi? Oh yeah, they do. But think about this. Think of the force multiplier that somebody like you, Chuck, you got a deal with the library. I'm making this up, but it's probably not untrue. 10 years ago, you got a deal. You got something placed with the library. Then that library said, do you have any more of those? Yes, I do. Now you've got 8 or 9 or 10 of those in that library. And then 6 months later, oh, hey, Chuck, you were really good with that, country stuff, country instrumental stuff. Can you do stuff that's a little more bluegrassy instrumental? Sure. So now you've got 8 or 9 of those in there. And that happens in 2 or 3 different libraries over a period of 3, 4, 5 years. And then it starts force multiplying because those things start to get used, like that thing of Matt Hertz that was in the catalog for 10 years. You don't know if it's going to get used in a week, a month, a year, or 10 years. But if you get enough stuff out there and enough catalogs, pretty soon it could be, like Keith LeBrant famously has over 100,000 placements. And it's because he quietly sits in his basement with no sunlight ever and makes his music relentlessly and does an incredibly good job of it. And
you're touching on, Michael, a fundamental financial concept of compound interest.
Right.
Drawn on my experience as a financial advisor, I view my own catalog and my library as kind of akin to a mutual fund. We own a lot of shares.
Yep.
And over time, the shares continue to produce. And as you're expanding into more libraries in more territories globally, you're getting global exposure. I learned as a financial advisor, 80% of the capitalization of companies are outside the U.S.
Yeah.
So it's incumbent on us as composers to have international representation with our music. The world is a big place.
We went hog
But
wild about starting before COVID and continued doing it during COVID and have done it very, very effectively. Taxi has doubled the number of libraries that we work with, and I would say the majority of those that we've added to our roster of clients are outside of the U.S., whether they're Australia, the UK, Israel. That one happened because my wife was going over there, and she said, "Can Taxi pay for my airfare?" And I said, "Not unless it's a working trip." Here's the name of a library. If you go over there and take this library owner out to lunch or dinner and get them to start running listings with us. And she came back, called me and said, "You will love this guy. He will be your best friend. Don't put his name in the chat room, anybody who knows, because people watch these shows that shouldn't have that guy's name." Anyway, he and I literally hit it off big time. And whenever I go over there, I see him. And my wife was right. We're like long lost brothers. So, yay. But yeah, the compound interest and globalizing the number of why not? Why limit it to just the U.S.?
You're creating leverage. You're
Yep.
creating leverage. A couple other things I do want to touch on. I think it's important to find your peeps. Build a group of people that can keep you uplifted when you're feeling down and out about things. As you probably know, we have a composer hang in Nashville. We've been doing it now for 13 years. LA had one before us, and Matt Vanderbilt has one up in Boise. And it's a group of people that are helping each other keep going. Because there's enough things that pull you down. You've got to surround yourself with people that are going to keep you going. I also think it's important to collaborate. That's a way to make music better. The thing that's interesting to me, almost every time someone collaborates with someone for the first time, one of the two says this: "I would have never come up with that idea."
Right.
And I've always been of the opinion, when your mind is stretched, it doesn't snap back. Saying, "I would have never come up with that idea," your mind is stretched a little bit. And the music's better. The music's better. Plus, what you've got going is the dynamic of getting the work done, because you're not going to leave your collaborator hanging. You're going to get the work done. If you want to build and sustain a healthy trust relationship. But working the numbers is important. You just got to get a ton of music out in as many places as you can. And if you find joy in your returns, that'll help facilitate that. Do you want to spend some time talking about books? Or do we end at right at 7? Or is it, we got about another 11 or 12 minutes to go, Michael?
No, we've got 40-some minutes to go. We go until half past the hour.
Oh, I didn't know about that.
Oh, that's because you don't watch my show every week, Chuck. There. Publicly embarrassed you.
Well, I check in on it on YouTube. Okay.
Yeah, let's talk books.
Yes.
I wish I could easily turn my camera around. I've got like an armoire in my office that literally filled head to toe with, probably 300-400 books in there. I've read 800-ish, more than 800 now since I started Taxi 33 years ago. And at home, my wife and I were talking about it the other day. So we have so many books. Hers are all history books and mine are all business books. But I mark mine up. I'm looking around to see if I have them, but I mark them up. I bend pages. I highlight. I write notes in the margins. I write notes inside the covers, like elaborate notes. And so it makes them worthless. If I'm done with them, and I don't feel like I need to keep it around for 20 years. I want to go donate them to Goodwill or something, or the public library, but they won't take them, if the pages are marred in any way, shape, or form, they don't want them.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Well, one of the books, I remember telling you about this one when I read it, Stephen Pressfield's The Art of War. Yeah. And everything he has subsequently written, the concept of resistance and being aware of resistance, things that are keeping you from getting your work done, I think are critical. I think one of the most important books of the last decade or so is Grit by Angela Duckworth. She is a psychologist by training, teaches at the University of Pennsylvania. And I heard this anecdote from another one of my favorite nonfiction writers, Daniel Pink. He and Angela Duckworth are friends. Early in her career, Angela Duckworth was engaged by West Point. They have a summer program leading up to the cadets' freshman year, and there's probably different terminology in a military school that I don't know, I'm not aware of. But they had a disproportionate number of the incoming cadets drop out of the summer program and never enter their freshman year, and they wanted to figure out why. So she looked at everything under the sun: your GPA, how'd you do on the basketball court, the football field, your community involvement. Were you a legacy? Was your dad in the Army? Your great-granddad was 5-star general? And they found that none of that mattered. What mattered is they literally grit their teeth and kept going through the 6-week program. None of the other stuff mattered at all. So the book is about what is grit and how to get grit. And it's the type of book that you don't have to read cover to cover. You can turn some pages and find something that's interesting to you and just leave it for a while and absorb that. But one of the I think powerful things in one of the chapters, she talks about effort counts twice, and she has 2 formulas. Effort times talent equals skill. Effort times skill equals achievement. And I love how that's broken down, because you can have all the talent in the world, but unless you put effort to developing skills, you're never going to go anywhere with your talent. And you can have all the skills in the world, but unless you put some effort to utilize your skills, you're never going to achieve anything. So I think being aware of those 2 things, and it obviously all this kind of ties together. You have all the talent in the world, but if you don't practice guitar, you're never going to be a very good guitar player.
Right.
Now, kind of a companion book to that, and Angela Duckworth's a friend of the author of this book, a book called Mindset. Carol Dweck is the author, D-W-E-C-K. And this is about a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset. And if you have a fixed mindset, how do you develop a growth mindset? And one of the really interesting anecdotes in that book is at one point she had 80 8th graders, it might have been 7th or 6th, it's not important for the story, divided them into 2 groups of 40 and gave them all the same test. And at the end of the test, they said this to one group: you did really well on the test, you must be very smart. And the other group, they said, you did very well on the test, you must have worked very hard. So then they came back to the same 2 groups of 40 and offered them an option. You could take a test of the same difficulty or a harder test. The kids that were told you must be very smart took the test of the same difficulty. The kids that were told you must have worked really hard opted for the harder tests. Michael, everybody I've shared this story with they had the same reaction you just had.
Yeah.
I deliberately looked at you.
What was the rationale? What was the result of that?
When you're told you're the best quarterback we've ever seen in this high school, you're the most amazing violinist that's ever walked the halls of this place, you never want to look less than that. So you quit taking risks. You quit trying. Isn't that counterintuitive?
Makes perfect sense when you say it out loud.
Yeah, it's so counterintuitive. And the valedictorian at graduation, high school graduation that we attended, was one of those people. And her valedictorian speech was, full of like the old song title valedictorian speech. I mean, it was such a safe speech because she was told, you're just brilliant. You're going to do great things in your life.
She probably wrote it with ChatGPT anyway.
Well, it existed that long ago. But I've said to people, I think grit and mindset should go home with you from the hospital when your child is born, because nobody had an owner's manual. And who doesn't want to raise kids that continue to persist in the face of adversity? And who wants to raise a kid that has a fixed mindset and they never want to grow in life? And the key to the mindset thing is you praise the effort, not the person. You say you did a really good, you worked really hard on this art project, or I know you worked really hard on this book report. You don't say great book report, you praise the effort. And interestingly enough, one of my new taxi friends who's in Nashville, we talked about this book on one of our flights, either the PMC or home from the taxi rally. And he told me a day or two later, he said, I started praising the effort of my 7-year-old, and it was remarkable at how she reacted differently, which is an interesting thing.
Yeah.
You praise the effort.
Wow, they should make that first day of teacher school in college for people who want to go on to be primary school teachers. Praise the effort.
Yep, not the person. You praise their effort. But that, the point earlier, you never know when you're going to get something out of a book that really informs the way you operate in your own life.
Yeah.
There's two right there with grit and mindset. You referenced Little Bets. This is one of my favorite books as well. Rick Sims is the author of this one. The opening chapter is about Chris Rock, the comedian. And it's about how he goes into at the time, this book was probably 13 years old now, he would go into comedy clubs in LA with legal pads full of ideas for bits. And he would test them in the clubs. And that was a big part of what he did. I had an opportunity to hear him on the David Letterman show, probably 10 years ago now. And it appeared like he was coming up with this stuff just off the cuff. Mm-hmm. I got into a whole thing about Oprah Winfrey, because you probably recall Dave Letterman and Oprah had this fake feud they had on. But one of the things that Chris Rock said, he said, man, that Oprah's amazing. She's got her own magazine and she's on the cover every month. One month it's Oprah playing football. The next month it's Oprah riding a horse. You don't come up with that kind of stuff on the fly. So he's in the field testing all this stuff. But the chapter on Pixar is really interesting. The CEO at the time said this: we never finish a movie, we just release it. That has a direct application on us as composers and songwriters, because you can scrub the life out of your track. You just get it out there. And they describe their process as going from suck to non-suck.
Right. Earlier, I said Disney. I meant Pixar, but they have to ship it on a date because they have a release date and they have this whole big coordinated thing that happens. So they don't have a choice. If it's 95% ready on that date, they have to send it out the way it is.
Yeah, every film's like that.
Yeah.
Every film's like that. But I think you alluded to this. They still do storyboards. When this book was written, the latest Pixar movie was Toy Story 3. And they generated like 54,000 storyboards for that movie. Wow. And on Mondays, the artists get together and they look at each other's work. They critique each other's work. And they develop this concept of plussing. There's a playfulness to it. And it basically goes like this. If you and I are on the team and you show me a storyboard of Woody, the cowboy figure, and he's got a gold star on his cowboy hat, my plussing would be this: Michael, I wonder, you've got a gold star on his cowboy hat. I wonder what it would look like if you put those same gold stars on his boots. And I didn't shut down free flow of ideas. It's entirely up to you as my co-artist to take that and do something with it. Or I might say, I notice his belt is silver. I wonder if the star on his hat should be silver as well. And over the last 2 years, I've used that plussing lyrics on a jazz female vocal album, a male jazz vocal album, and a country album. And we've had some remarkable results with that idea of plussing. So one of the things we would say, I wonder if there's a better word for this word, and we'd explore other words. Is this the same? Is it better? Is there any impact? You're kind of weighing this stuff along the way. But there's none of this, we tried that 10 years ago and it didn't work kind of stuff that happens in brainstorming sessions. And it's been remarkable. My favorite anecdote on the country album that was going to be ready to be released here soon is one of the opening lyrics was, "The train whistles in the dead of night." And here was the blessing. We changed the to a, so it became "a train whistles in the dead of night." By just making that change, the train became more desolate and more lonely, because now it's one, not just a generic train. And both Gary, the guy that wrote the original draft of the lyrics, and I were just kind of gobsmacked that just changing that from the to made a huge difference in the impact.
Yeah, we talked about this in the hotel lobby, that there was a period for, I don't know, somewhere around 7, 8, 10 years where I was going to Nashville about every 6 weeks, spending more time than any outsider, especially from LA or New York, probably spent in Nashville. And I did it because I couldn't leave Taxi in LA and just move to Nashville, but I knew you had to be well networked and show up a lot to get the respect of people on the road, because it's a pretty closed group of people. They've gone there, they paid their dues for a very, very, very long time, and it's not like, hey, I can just waltz in and be part of the happening crowd. So in my effort to do that, or in my efforts, plural, I would go to writing sessions, or I would go to meetings, probably 5, 6, 7 publishers a day. And it was amazing how the writers in Nashville will change a but to an and, or take a 3-syllable word and find a way to slur it into 2 syllables. They would go for such levels of craft, but it is plussing in the room, because the other writers don't go, "Oh, that's a terrible idea, Bob." They'll go, "Well, let's try it. Let's see how it works. What if we did it like this?" And they don't even think consciously that they're plussing it. They just do it because that's the way they do it.
Yeah, well, Nashville's always been the songwriters' town and continues to have that reputation.
Yeah.
Well, at one of your events in Nashville at the Lowe's Vanderbilt Hotel is the first time I met Dean Crepane.
Right.
What year was that? That must have been 08 or 09.
Oh, God, that was forever ago. And also, it might have been before that. I don't know. Whatever. It was a very long time ago. And I asked Dean to get up and tell the story about how the helicopter would fly over his town in Washington State and drop ping pong balls with like free candy bar at Bob's drugstore and, a free car wash for mom, blah, blah, blah. And he told the story. It's like the opportunities are there. You just have to show up and grab the ping pong balls in order to win the prize. And he was equating that to Taxi and submitting music for the listing. So again, that showing up thing. I remember, I want to say Dane and I had a scotch before we started the seminar at the hotel bar at Lowe's. Maybe it was after. I don't know, but I don't drink very much. And I remember being a little more buzzed than I probably should have been. But that was a great event. I met
We ended up at the bar. We ended up in the bar at the end of the night.
Fett and Nancy were there, and I went out on the patio, like close to West End. And they had some tables with umbrellas out there, and Fett and Nancy and I were having a beer or whatever. And this guy came over and introduced himself. "Hi, my name is Rick Hayes. I couldn't help but hear that you guys were talking music." And I said, "Dude, you're in Nashville. That's all they talk about in Nashville is music." Anyway, I really liked him, and we became friends. And eventually, Rick Hayes is the guy that runs the 200-seat theater at the Road Rally. He's part of the Nick Phillips Productions crew, our audio crew that we absolutely adore. And so it's funny how that one trip to Nashville, where I basically did like a Taxi film and TV seminar way before anybody's lights were turned on in the subject, in Nashville. I remember Jeffrey Steele is an old friend of mine. I've probably known him for 25 years maybe. And he was driving down the road one day, and he sees me walking from meeting to meeting on the sidewalk, stops his car in the middle of the street, jumps out. He was driving like a little convertible. He jumps over the door, out of the convertible, runs up, gives me a big hug, goes, "What are you doing in town?" Yeah, his accent's better than that. Anyway, and I said, "Oh, I'm doing a film and TV seminar," and he said, "Oh, dude, get one of my songs in a movie and get me a check for 75 grand." And as brilliant and well informed as Jeffrey Steele is about the country music world in Nashville, and period, and the greater industry, he was pretty clueless about film and TV. So I did one night of a seminar only for prose songwriters, because those guys needed to understand it's not like writing a song that ends up in the top 10. Doesn't pay that way, and it's a whole different type of song. And then the next night I did the one at the Lowe's, I think. Oh, no, I did one at Studio 515 that was for... No, 515 was for the industry. The next night was at the Lowe's for the general public. And I was quite astonished.
Was it 615? Randy Wackler's
No,
library?
515
No.
Studios in Berry
Okay.
Hill. It was an actual
okay.
physical studio, not Randy's company. Anyway, I was just amazed at how you could take a town where 9,000 people have had a top 10 cut in their lifetimes. Many of them never get another one. Many of them, are working as a mechanic or behind the cosmetics counter at a department store to pay their rent while they're pursuing their next cut. And as involved as people are in the music industry, they were completely and utterly ignorant of the music library side of the industry, which is not the case anymore. It's finally kind of kicked in, although I do have a standing invite from Jim Thacker. He and I are going to put something together in Nashville. I'm going to come back and spread a little taxi love around town on the film TV side of things.
Yeah. There's still a lot of people that don't. I run into them. They're the bag boy at Whole Foods, the barista at Honest Coffee. They're all over the place.
Yeah. Waitresses at the, what's the waffle place? Oh God.
Pancake Pantry.
Pancake Pantry. I still have a T-shirt from there. Yeah, I've had waitresses at the pantry that have written a top 10 hit.
Yeah, but you always find the guitar players because they have nails on the right hand and no nails on the left. I've got a funny guitar repair anecdote. I took one of my guitars in, my 335, and the output jack wasn't working, and the tech put it on his table, and did this up and down the neck, and he looked up at me and says, "You can really play, can't you?" Because he's used to having guitars that have wear on the first 4 frets, maybe 5 if your capo went up. Right. I had wear all the way up and down the fingerboard.
That's funny.
Yeah, it was very funny. Very funny. We got 20 minutes.
Yeah, we do. By the way, a couple people have said, "Hey, can we get a list of books?" So do me a favor. After we're done, would you email me a list of like your 10 favorite books? That would be helpful to our audience, and we'll put those in the comments or somewhere, with the video on YouTube, so people can go find that list. Okay.
Yeah, good. I'd be happy to do that. I love helping people find books, and I'm always on the lookout for books too. So I'm always looking for recommendations too. The Practicing Mind is a book that I just pulled off the bookshelf a couple weeks ago. I'd read it before, and I was on the way to get my hair cut. It's a small book. But in that book, they talk about focusing in on the process, not the product. In our world, it means focus on creating the music and completely forgetting about anything after that. Being worried about the product, being monetized and used somewhere and monetized. Yeah, that's Dave Walton.
Yep. Did he come up with that? My wife was asking me at the rally, who was the first person to say it? That was Walton?
Dave Walton, yeah.
Where is Dave Walton these days? I haven't seen that guy in 10 years or more. Is he still living in America?
I don't have any idea. He's kind of dropped out of sight.
All right.
I spent the whole decade of my 50s learning to let go of outcomes. As a financial advisor, I had no control of any decisions any of our clients would make. But I realized I had influence. And that has spilled over into what we do as composers and singer-songwriters. We have no control of the outcome of a taxi forward or a return or ever getting a placement. We have no control of that, but we do have control of an influence on creating better and more music. A quantity of quality music is the way I put it. That's what we have control of. And one of the things I do in my talk, and I think I've mentioned this before, I use the dry erase board and I put boxes for every part of the taxi process. Join taxi, read the listings, write to the listings, submit to the listings, and then it goes into screening. From screening on, you have no control of what goes on. You have no control of a forward or a return. You have no control of getting a deal. You have no control of that music ever getting placed, and you have no control of it ever being monetized. That's where all the angst is. That's where all the angst is. That's the product part of this. The process part is joining taxi, reading listings, writing to the listings, and submitting. And then forget about it. You have no control of it, but you do have influence by getting better with your craft. And obviously all this stuff comes in together, collaborating, getting sharper in your saw. I mean, it all fits together as a philosophy of how you want to work and really kind of live your life. But that focusing on the process, not the product, and that includes, by the way, I think, parenting. We have no control of our kids, but we do have influence.
Yeah. You're right. We don't. I would go back to talking about, making a submission. You do have some control on the outcome. People always say, oh, the music industry is like a lottery, or film and TV music is like a lottery, to which I say there's an aspect of it where that's true. But ultimately, you do have some control because the more you read the brief and get closer to the making an accurate pitch, you do control the outcome to some degree. You can't control the outcome when the library just puts it in its catalog waiting for 2.5 years for somebody to come along that may want to license it and it works really well for a scene. You definitely can't control that. But as I said, the very first 5 minutes of the Road Rally this year, so many people, we've all been conditioned, brainwashed since the 60s. Write a hit song, write a hit song, write a great song. My song is better than you, or she was born more talented or more gifted. You're absolutely right. It's about doing the work repetitively. It's not about being gifted, because gifted doesn't necessarily, or even maybe very often, make it into a scene in a movie or a TV show. But writing a piece of music where you understand how emotion is so important to a scene and you're able to craft a piece of music that can amplify that emotion, that is a learned skill. And you do have control over applying that. So you can improve your odds, but you can't control the final outcome. You're right. Comes a point where the dog is off the leash there.
No, this, I'm going to go back to one of the things. I deliberately have submit to the listing. Time and time again on the taxi forum, someone says, oh, I thought the deadline was tomorrow or yesterday. That happens regularly and frequently on the taxi forum.
Well, so I hope they're in Australia, so they've got a good excuse.
Well, yeah, that might be what it is. Malcolm Gladwell is one of my favorite authors. He's famous for Tipping Point with the 10,000 hour thing, which I think is debunked a little.
That's a must read, though.
Yeah. Well, he talked. The one thing that I do think is correct. He talked about by the time anybody knew about the Beatles, they put their 10,000 hours in all these little basement cellar bars all over Germany. So they put in their 10,000 hours. His before the last one, by the way, he's revisiting Tipping Point, and I've just started that. I haven't gotten deep enough into it, but David and Goliath is an interesting read by him. And the first chapter talks historically about the Bible story of David and Goliath. Goliath had something like a pituitary gland problem, which caused him to be larger than a normal person and also caused him to have bad vision. And David was a shepherd, and to keep wolves and I guess wolves, predators away from the sheep, he got very skillful at the slingshot. And then those two things converged, and Goliath couldn't see him. So when he says "come closer," it's because he couldn't see the little guy. So it's a historical perspective on David and Goliath. But he chose that title because basically the book is about bigger is not always better, and sometimes your shortcomings are your greatest asset, which is kind of an interesting perspective. There's a chapter on Brian Grazer, the producer of every one of Ron Howard's films. He's dyslexic, and so during middle school and high school, if he got a D on a test, he would go in and negotiate a better grade with his teacher.
That paid off.
He was honing these skills of negotiating through high school because he was dyslexic. Isn't that an interesting one?
That's great.
A very interesting read. I think a lot of people have probably read this one, The Creative Act, A Way of Being, Rick Rubin's book. Michael's grabbing his copy as we speak.
Gee, Chuck, what do you mean? We do read a lot of the same books, sitting right here on my desk.
And that, too, is one you don't have to read cover to cover. If you need a moment of inspiration, turn pages to a chapter and read that chapter.
Yeah, it always makes me wonder what it's like to be Rick Rubin. He lives on his own planet in the best possible way. Yeah.
And I was thinking about this one in the practice idea. And I didn't touch on this, but if you're a singer-songwriter, a good reason to practice is learning more chords, learning more chord voicings, and learning diminished chords and learning augmented chords, because it's going to expand your playbook. And I thought about that with Rick Rubin's thing. Was it 1, 2, 3 McCartney? Was that the name of the Apple TV series that he did? Something like that.
I don't know.
But there's one point where Paul McCartney sits down at the piano and he plays the progression: C major 7th, E minor 7th, E minor 7th, F major 7th. And he learned that progression, and out of that he wrote Here, There, and Everywhere.
Wow.
Which is a segue to another good book.
Jeff
Emmerich's book.
I think that is Here, There, and Everywhere by Jeff Emmerich, but it's Hear, not Here. I got to know him personally because I interviewed him at the Road Rally, and I took him out to dinner probably 3 weeks before the rally, and we stayed in touch. He actually came up to Deb, and I had the presidential suite at the hotel. They give it to me every year because I bring in the Road Rally. Jeff got to the hotel. He was pretty, I hate to use the word anal retentive about it, but Jeff's the kind of guy that shows up an hour early for whatever. Was the kind of guy. Sadly, he passed away.
I was worried you were going to say soused.
No, not that. Anyway, he showed up an hour before I needed him there, and I was getting ready. I was like, shaving and putting on my sport coat, whatever, getting ready to go downstairs and start the Road Rally. And he texted and he said, I'm downstairs walking around, but people are starting to come up to me and ask questions. I don't want to burn out my voice before I go to the stage. Is there somewhere I can go? I said, yeah, come on up to our suite. So my wife had no idea who he was. She could care less about anything music related other than she loves music. But she would never read liner notes, probably couldn't name an artist. She once thought the Beatles had more than 4 members. So that's my wife. And here she is sitting with Jeff Emmerich, the Beatles engineer, in our hotel room. I ordered some tea up for him because he loves his tea, loved his tea. And my wife's sitting there talking. She goes, he's very, very nice. And wow, he really does know a lot about the Beatles. Yeah, honey, he was in the room for a lot of that stuff. Anyway, that book, I agree with you. That is a must read. If you love the Beatles and you've read the other books, that one pulls back the curtain really on George Martin. He was not very kind to George Martin in that book. He didn't go out of his way to bash him, But I'd heard that quietly from other people that George, could go to a fundraiser, black tie fundraiser, show up at 12:30 a.m. after he finished the fundraiser, stick his head in the studio and go, "How's it going, boys? Oh, you did that today? Cheerio. See you tomorrow," and then take credit for whatever happened in that 8-hour session that he wasn't there for. So,
well, a couple things related to that book. It's that when he was the keynote speaker at the rally, I traveled with my copy. I have an autographed copy of that book. It's the only time I've ever done that. There was something else. For a while, Billy Preston might have been considered the fifth Beatle.
Yeah. My wife didn't know that, though. I'm not giving her any credit where it's not right. Due.
David Byrne's book, How Music Works, is an interesting read.
Haven't read that one.
And again, it's one of these, you don't turn pages, just read a little bit and find a chapter that's interesting. I'm a big fan of reading biographies. Biographies of any composer or songwriter. There's a ton of them. The book on Joni Mitchell came out just last year, the year before, written by Anne, she's an NPR critic. I went to the book thing. It'll come to me. The common thread with everybody who's somebody we know is they had struggles. They had trials and tribulations along the way.
Very few people pop out of their mommy prepared to be heroic and awesome at what they do and just have a gifted life. They may happen, once in a generation or a decade or even a century, but most people have to work at it. Gee, why is that surprising?
Yeah. They stay the course and enjoy the journey.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of David McCullough's work. He was considered one of our greatest historians, died a year or two ago. His book on the Wright brothers is a really interesting one. We all know that they're credited with inventing flight, but they had to build all their shelters over in Kitty Hawk. And one of the anecdotes I remember, Orville kept very detailed journals, and they each had one blanket. And in the winter, and it only came up to their chin. So in the winter, if they're cold, their head got cold, they'd pull it up over their head until their feet got cold, and then they'd reverse. And in the summer, as they were getting eaten alive by mosquitoes, they'd pull it up over their head until they got so hot they couldn't stand it, and then they'd put it back over their feet. And one year in my class, I said, let me read this again for emphasis. So I went through all that, and then I said, keep in mind, this is from Orville's journey. So I went through the journal. So I went through that, and I said, and also in his journal, he said, cell service was a little spotty today. The internet went down. To put in perspective that those are the things we have problems with.
Right.
Not only one blanket, we're getting eaten alive by mosquitoes or freezing to death in the winter. Boys in the Boat, a book about the University of Washington's rowing team. That became a film that George Clooney produced, and much like most books, it didn't translate thoroughly to the movie. But these guys were getting up at 4 a.m, getting out on Lake Washington. It's just again a story of persistence and keeping going. And they won at the Olympics. The Olympics. Where Jim Thorpe was there, and as they're rowing, Hitler's in the stands, and they won, and Hitler and all the other people in his party immediately left. But that's a story, and an interesting part.
Nothing better than being somewhere that Hitler leaves.
That's right. But the other dynamic is there's some very poor kids that are barely hanging on, staying in school, and other very wealthy kids too. So there's that part of the story, in addition to all the struggles that they have. Another David McCullough book that's probably my favorite is The Great Bridge. It's about the building of the Brooklyn Bridge. Washington Roebling Jr. was the chief engineer. And they didn't know what the bends were when they built the bridge. So they learned how to make caissons from the French, and they put them in the river, and then they would put pressurized air in to get all the water out, and they have a ladder and crawl down to the bottom and start digging out the riverbed.
Right.
And they got so deep they got the bends, and he became disabled because of the bends. He oversaw the completion of the bridge across the river in Manhattan through a telescope, and his wife did the communication with the people the engineers that were actually building the bridge. But an interesting part of that is it joined east to west. Think about that for a second. Prior to the Brooklyn Bridge, you'd have to take boats across the river.
Right.
They were slow, and it had this huge impact on commerce in New York. But it joined east to west, which is interesting. But also, let's talk about fiction for a second. I came to this conclusion a number of years ago. We might be really good at crafting music, but maybe not so good at crafting titles for our music. And so I started keeping Post-it notes on my nightstand, and when I see a 2 or 3 word phrase, I write it down. Then I transfer them all to my iPad, I'm a collector of titles, and I also do research on titles. I had a lot of music on a Goofy show. This through Taxi listing years ago, Haunted Collector. And I actually did some research. I got a bunch of 99 cents or free Kindle books on paranormal phenomena. So I came up with titles like Roaming Vapors and Enter the Crypt. And I ended up having like 40 to 50 tracks used on those shows. And I was convinced that it was because of the titles. If an editor is sitting watching a scene and this starts happening in the forest, rising vapors, and he sees a title.
I remember that show, and I remember they ran, was it through a library? We had some producer of paranormal shows, ran a bunch of listings with Taxi, didn't want to go through a library, and was that one of yours that made it in that show?
It was so long ago, I don't recall the details, Mike.
Okay.
I mean, that's 10 or 12 years longer or so. But that convinced me how important titles are. And another example, I don't remember the novel at this point, but I was working on some dramedy tracks, and part of the brief was electric guitar as a voice in the dramedy rather than just pizzicato strings and mallets.
Right.
And I turned the page of a book, and in the top first paragraph at the top, this phrase jumped out. The name of the album was Naughty Neighborhood, and this title jumped out. Incorrigible Gossips. What a great title for something that's under Naughty Neighborhood.
Right. Dramedy track, people peeking through the blinds over the bushes. Perfect for that. Yep. You know exactly what you're going to hear before you hear it. Not only do you and I share a love of reading, but we share a love of writing everything on a Post-it. At least I keep them all in one place.
Yeah, I have them scattered all over the place. But I realized if we turn to wordsmiths that might be a little bit better at putting words together, that might be a helpful thing. And you can't copyright a 2 or 3 word phrase. But in addition to, great authors are going to help stretch your imagination, and that's going to spill over to writing lyrics. You say, I've got to tell a story. Did I learn something about putting together a sentence that will inform my work? So I'm a big believer in that too, reading fiction. So
I find that in TV shows. I literally, in the coffee table in front of our couch, I have about 3 Post-it pads in there and a half a dozen pens because I'm always scrambling around trying to find one. And I will be watching a TV show or a movie and hear a phrase used by one of the actors that the person who wrote the script. They're professional writers. So if an actor says something that's a 3-word phrase that I think would be a good title, might be a great title for an episode of TAXITV, for something I do in the newsletter, whatever, I write it down because somebody who is a much better writer than I am came up with that. And I don't steal it word for word, but I'll take the concept or change one word, not because I'm trying to be so noble, so much as you have to take the clay and then mold it into what you need. But I have also found, I've done a couple of Taxi TVs about this, that any of the AIs, ChatGPT and Grok are a couple that I've done this with, are really good at generating titles for instrumental cues. And my personal feeling is a title should telegraph what the music is probably going to sound like, because it makes it easier for the editor to go to it. Although the editor, Brock Carlson, I had on stage at the rally, goes, I never do that. So apparently not 100% of them. And he's considered to be one of the busier, more high-priced editors, certainly in the unscripted TV world. But I have put stuff into ChatGPT for the purpose of demonstration for the show. It's very effective. It gets about 70 or 80% of what it generates, if your prompts are good, will be very usable titles that will be better than what we as average human beings can come up with. So you know what? Songwriters get inspired, so should people creating titles.
Yeah, yes. And one of the I was going to touch on this earlier. And this might fall under sharpen your saw, does fall under be proactive. I've heard people say over the years, I'm really bad at coming up with titles. And I never say this, but I think to myself, well, there's two fundamental choices. You can keep saying I'm really bad at doing titles, or learn how to get good at typing your tracks. That is an option. You can learn how to get better at titling your tracks.
People don't want to work, people want to believe that their talent is somehow special and that that's the thing that will get recognized and launch them into the stratosphere. It's always work. Yeah. It's the craftsmanship of all of this.
Yeah. And it's kind of, we need to put a cap on it here soon. It's, you got to keep going. You got to keep showing up. You got to keep going. That's it. That's it. If you have talent. If you have talent.
And if you don't have talent, at least develop skills. I believe that skills will get, you don't have to be a talented guitar player to do an acoustic guitar vocal, kind of a raw emotion kind of song about loss or tragedy or heartbreak with nothing more than an acoustic guitar and a vocal. You don't have to be a talented guitarist, but you do have to be good enough to use the guitar as your tool for writing the song. So those are two different things. I mean, a guitarist like you, or oh gosh, we were just talking about before the show.
Keith?
What?
No. Keith? No.
Keith is pretty talented, but practice. Anyway, you don't get to be a guitar player at that level. He didn't pop out of his mommy's belly like that. Yeah. It's that simple. Yeah. And we do have to wrap this up, but if you have a final thought, now is the time to lay it on it.
Well, thanks everybody for tuning in, and thank you, Michael, for having me today.
Thank you for suggesting the topic. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Well, this is a journey, and it should be a fun journey. If you're not having fun, it needs to be examined. Figure out why. I'm having a ball.
And you've been doing it for a lot of years, and you're still having a ball, which is important to note, because a lot of people give up in a year, or give up in 6 months, or give up after 3 submissions. Like, Taxi didn't work out for me. No, I hate to say it and lay it in your lap, folks, but you didn't work out for you.
Well, the infamous thing that happens on the Taxi forum, because I still get on every once in a while, is I'm up for renewal. In the last year, I've submitted 15 tracks. I got 11 returns and 4 forwards and no deals. Taxi sucks.
Yeah.
And so many words. And when I was active, I had a standard thing I would post. Taxi works if you do.
Yeah. Look at all the people that have built, 6-figure or even some multi-6-figure careers. And they had never laid down a note of music for film or TV before hearing about it through Taxi, and then learning about it through Taxi and the forum and the road rally, all that stuff combined, and then sticking with it for 5, 6, 7 years. Lo and behold, now they're making $40,000, $50,000 a year, and eventually they go on to make a six-figure career out of it.
Compounded.
Yeah, they didn't give up after four forwards that they didn't hear back on. And people make the assumption if they didn't call me, because clearly my stuff is good enough that if they got it forwarded to them, they would recognize my genius, call me right away and say, man, oh man, you're so talented, we should put you in our library. And it's not a matter of somebody else is more talented than you were. It's somebody else practiced it more and learned more about the kind of music that works well for libraries, and they beat you to the finish line because they put in that extra effort. It's not about talent.
Mm-hmm.
So
I don't know if I saw one of the posts about I've been a Taxi member for a year, but when I joined for 3 years. I didn't want to question after a year if this was working. Because I knew I wouldn't have enough information to make a reasonable judgment on that.
Well,
so I signed up for 3 years.
I'm glad we lived up to that standard, Chuck. And I'm glad you did as well. So with that, I want to wish you and your wife a happy... Robin, right, is your wife's name?
Yeah. Yes.
See that? How many business owners know the names of the wives of the people who they serve? I do, because Taxi is just one big damn happy family, and I'm very proud of that and grateful for it.
And Deborah might too.
There you go. Yeah, I mean, seriously, I don't think we ever knew Steve Jobs' wife's name until he passed away, and she inherited all that money.
Yeah.
Anyway, happy Thanksgiving to you, Robin, and I will pass word along to Deb, and to all of you watching today, thank you. And Chuck, thanks for coming up with the idea for the show. It's great information. I will be back next week after Thanksgiving with Brian Ralston, who is a film score composer, and now he's going to the dark side, also producing films as well. And I saw an interview with him about 2 months before the Road Rally and said, I have got to get this guy on stage at the Road Rally. He did not disappoint. I'm probably going to relive all the stuff that I did with him in the ballroom, because I worked, 15 hours maybe coming up the line of questioning for that 1 hour interview. And he's just so loaded with information and so rational and practical, logical, pragmatic. And he spits it out to you in a way where you go, wow, I never thought about it like that. Wow. One of the things we talked about fairly extensively was for people like us in the taxi world, not having a great chance of getting a song in particular into a big Hollywood production. Probably not going to happen. It's probably not going to happen that they're going to give you the composer, have you score a tentpole film for Hollywood. Not going to happen. They're going to call Hans Zimmer for that. And it's not because he's more talented, but because his name recognition makes the investors, who are the producers of the film feel like they've pulled in the A-team to make a great film. So all that said, he presents a great case for why even mid-level films are not likely to use small independent musicians, but we're going to pull back the curtain on where the future lies for you guys. So don't miss me with Brian Ralston next week. Chuck, thank you once again. Have a great Thanksgiving. We'll see you all next week for another exciting episode of TAXITV Live. Bye, you guys. Keith LeBrant. Whoa, there's that weird glitch.
Is that Keith's track?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did it in an hour. And